Diddy just scored a rare legal win. But don't let the headlines fool you. Yes, a brand new civil lawsuit accusing him of sexual assault was thrown out today. But it wasn't because the judge decided he was innocent, it was because of the clock. And the real kicker, this victory changes far less than you think. Stick around, because the way prosecutors and judges are framing this could still wreck Diddy's future in court. A New York judge just tossed out a civil sexual assault lawsuit against Diddy. And yes, at first glance, that sounds like a win. But here's the catch. The dismissal wasn't about evidence or innocence. It was about the clock. The accuser said he was assaulted back in 2015, but by the time he filed, the statute of limitations had already run out. So the case is gone, but the accusations remain, the headlines stick, and with his October sentencing looming, this victory may end up looking more like a warning shot than a rescue. Tonight, we're breaking down what this dismissal really means. Let's start with today's news. This case was filed earlier this year by a man who said he was a 23-year-old artist in 2015 when Diddy allegedly drugged him at a studio and made unwanted sexual contact. He claimed that when he resisted, Diddy threatened to derail his career. Bad Boy Entertainment and Combs Enterprises were also named as co-defendants. On the surface, that's serious, but the judge never even got to the evidence because the clock had already run out. Back in 2015, New York's statute of limitations for sexual battery was 5 years. By 2020, the window to sue was closed. In 2019, the state extended that statute to 20 years in an effort to make justice more accessible to survivors. But here's the catch. That law isn't retroactive. You can't use it to reopen claims that were already dead. So legally, this case was doomed from the start. The judge dismissed it outright. Here's the key thing. A dismissal on statute of limitations doesn't mean the allegations were false. It just means the courts can't weigh them. Think of it like missing the deadline to file your taxes. The government doesn't say you didn't earn income. It says you're too late to report it. And that's why this is being called a procedural victory. Diddy's legal team didn't prove innocence. They simply ran out the clock. For the accuser, this ruling may feel like a door slammed shut. Imagine carrying a story for years, finally filing, and being told, sorry, you're too late. That sense of timing versus truth is exactly what critics of the system are highlighting. But while this case is gone, it's only one piece of the puzzle, because Diddy's legal scoreboard still stacked against him. Let's break down what's left on the table. So what does this one case tossed actually change? Short answer, not much, because the rest of Diddy's legal map still looks like a minefield. First, why this case died. The judge said the statute of limitations ran out. New York extended the limit to 20 years in 2019, but that change isn't retroactive. You can't revive claims that were already time-barred. The Adult Survivors Act did open a special one-year look-back window, November 24th, 2022 to November 24th, 2023. But that window is closed now. Second, the scoreboard everyone's asking for. Rodney Jones Jr., a judge knocked out 5 of 9 claims, including RICO, but left the big ones standing: sexual assault, premises liability, and TVPA, trafficking, against Diddy and his chief of staff. Translation: the hardest-hitting claims are still alive. Sarah Rivers. The court dismissed 21 of 22 claims. The judge held off on deciding the remaining gender-motivated violence claim pending higher court guidance. It's mostly a win for Diddy, but not a full wipeout. Today's dismissal tossed entirely on timing, not facts, so it doesn't say anything about whether the allegation was true, only that it was too late. And the elephant in the room, the federal criminal case. Prosecutors say Diddy ran his world like a criminal enterprise, coercion, intimidation, and a years-long pattern of abuse tied to his business. That's the storyline they'll keep pounding in every filing. Expect Diddy's team to spin today's dismissal as proof that many claims are flimsy. But spin doesn't change the cases that did survive, hello TVPA, or the DOJ's narrative about a coordinated operation. That's the stuff that matters in the long run. Which brings us to the real question: does this technical win move the needle before sentencing? Or are prosecutors already scripting the judge's view of Diddy as the ringleader of a criminal machine? Will today's dismissal help Diddy when the judge hammers out his sentence? Legally, not really. Sentencing is about the criminal record and trial evidence, not unrelated civil timelines. Judges don't credit a different judge tossed a civil suit for timing as mitigation. What does matter is the portrait prosecutors are painting in the federal case. Diddy as the architect of an organized scheme, using wealth, staff, security, and industry leverage to control and silence people. That framing is straight from the DOJ's charging language, and it's exactly the kind of narrative that lands hard at sentencing. If you're looking for tea leaves, look at what survived in civil court. The TVPA trafficking claim in Lil Rod's suit still stands. Even though that's a civil case, the mere survival of a trafficking-based cause of action undercuts any it's-all-nonsense narrative the defense might attempt. Judges notice patterns, even across different dockets. So, where does that leave Diddy's options? New trial motion. Unlikely to change the optics even if filed. Prosecutors have already doubled down on the enterprise story. We've seen that language in their public filings and press materials. Appeal. Possible, but slow. And appeals don't retry facts. They target legal errors. Meanwhile, sentencing stays on the calendar, and prosecutors can cite the enterprise narrative to argue for stiff time. Multiple outlets peg that date as October 3rd. Defense might waive today's dismissal as Exhibit A in a pile-on story. Too many opportunistic suits, Your Honor, but that's PR more than law. A time bar doesn't cleanse the conduct, it only bars the forum. Judges know the difference. And outside the courtroom, one tossed case won't erase headlines or the memes. Let's talk how the culture is reading a win that isn't really a win. Here's the twist. Outside the courtroom, this dismissal plays very differently. On social media, reactions split fast. Some celebrated it as proof that Diddy is being unfairly targeted. Others slammed it as justice denied, pointing out that the dismissal wasn't about innocence, just legal deadlines. Memes popped up too. Everything from Diddy-free hashtags to sarcastic countdowns to his October sentencing date. This shows the cultural divide. In court, technicalities matter. Online, people care about perception. And for Diddy, perception is brutal. Even when he wins, he still looks like he's losing. Because when headlines say civil lawsuit dismissed, most readers don't see the fine print, they just see his name tied to sexual assault yet again. And for someone whose empire was built on celebrity status, brand deals, and cultural dominance, that shadow is as damaging as the legal battles. So let's wrap this up. What does this really mean for Diddy's future, and how much weight should we give this so-called victory? So here's the bottom line. Yes, Diddy got a lawsuit dismissed. But it wasn't because a judge said he was innocent. It was because the clock ran out. This is a procedural win, not a moral one. And while it lightens his civil load slightly, it doesn't change the fact that he's facing federal sentencing in October that could lock him away for decades. So, what do you think? Is this dismissal a sign that Diddy's legal storm might be overstated? Or is it just a tiny break in a much bigger disaster? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe, because this story isn't slowing down, and the next chapter might be the one that seals his fate.